Hello, I'm Caroline Goyder. I'm a voice coach, public speaker and the author of The Star Qualities. And we're here today in the Piccadilly Theatre because I'm going to be passing on some top tips for confidence, speaking well and making a really great impression. How to be confident whilst public speaking. The first thing to know about public speaking is that in an American study, most Americans said they were more frightened of public speaking than death. So if you have a speech coming up and you're feeling a bit nervous, really, you're not alone. It's human. And the reason we find it so scary is that as human beings, the thought of being stared at by lots of people triggers the oldest part of our brain, which basically says run away or fight. And what you've got to do if you're going to make a good speech is overcome that fear. And as someone who's made a few speeches in my time, I couldn't do it without the tip that is, get your content really clear and simple in your mind. If I have to make a speech with a script in my hand, I would find it utterly terrifying. So what I do is I make a mind map of my speech and I keep the points really clear and simple so that I can go from point to point in my mind without having to worry about exactly how to say a precise sentence. So investigate mind maps for public speaking. There's lots on the internet about it. There's another really good structure which comes from the RAF in Britain, which is the Air Force, and it says, tell them what you're going to tell them it, tell them what you've told them. People think, oh, well, that sounds like you're repeating yourself. Well, actually, you do need to repeat yourself when you're speaking because people won't remember what you say unless you say it 2 or 3 times. The other tip that was taught to me by news reporters is that you can use a structure which is introduction, point 1, point 2, point 3, and wrap. And that can give you even a 30-minute speech. You do a good introduction which tells people what you're going to tell them. Then you have your first point connected to a story, second point and a story, third point and a story, and finally you sum up with a good, concise wrap. And that gives people a very nice structure. It's called signposting, and the reason it matters is that if people know where you're going, it's much easier for them to listen. They don't wander off thinking, oh, this is going to last 4 hours, because you've told them what's coming next. So remember to signpost, keep your structure simple. The next tip really is about what happens once you've done your structuring and you're in the room. The big thing to remember is that people really want you to do well. And a lot of the time people look out at the faces of the audience and they look quite serious, and people start to think, oh, they're terrified, they don't like me, I'm not doing a good job here. What you've got to do is see them as friends, because if you do, your face relaxes, you look conversational, you look friendly, you look warm, and the audience suddenly start to warm up too, and the room is suddenly a nice place to be. There's another trick which is called the Bumblebee Technique, which is about eye contact. You divide up the room into a number of different groups, and they're like flowers. So maybe if you had 1,000 people, you would have 10 sections of 100 people. And you would look at one section at a time, and it's a bit like a bumblebee landing on a flower. So you look at the left, the back of the room, then you look at the front, the right of the room, then you look at the right at the back of the room, and so on. And it just means that your gaze travels around the whole room and that you start to really have a conversation with all of those people. And the other big tip, which really helps, is to speak in short thoughts. Don't think you have to rush through lots of paragraphs of text. You just go one clause at a time. And I like the Winston Churchill example, which is, we will fight them on the beaches, we will never surrender. And you can hear that he was breaking up that speech into very short thoughts. And if you do that, it means that you're always on the thought that you're speaking and your brain isn't rushing ahead. And then finally, keep your attention on the audience. You want to place 80% of your attention at least on the audience's response, and you don't want to be thinking too much about yourself. And the big rule that can help with that is just to remember, how can I help? What can you give these people that is going to make the half hour or the hour that they spend with you useful? And if you can do that, you're going to have a good response. And the thing I do at the beginning of a speech to help with that is get there early and go and talk to a couple of people coming into the room and find out what they want. What is it that's going to really make their afternoon or morning? And then as you start the speech, say, I was talking to X, I was talking to Y, and they told me that they really wanted to find out about this, and I'm going to talk about that later. It just makes you feel more confident because you've talked to the audience, and it gives you a nice, relaxed conversational starter. So those are my top tips for how to be confident while public speaking.